Welcome to episode 51 of the 301 show. We've got a great show on tap for you here today. Again, episode 51. KG makes his return to Minnesota, as well as we find out who the minority owners are in the for the Twins. The Wild continue their hot streak, as well as the Vikings season has unfortunately come to an end. All of that and more here on episode 51 of the 301 show.
From the land of 10,000 lakes and just as many heartaches, welcome to the 301 show. We're here to celebrate, commiserate, and maybe, just maybe, see a Minnesota team win it all. Whether you're dreaming of a Vikings Super Bowl, reliving the glory days of the Twins, or still recovering from the Timberwolves roller coaster, we've got you covered. This is the 301 show, where the North remembers and the passion never fades.
All right, now moving on to the Wolves Den here. The Timberwolves are 24-13. They remain the 6th in the Western Conference and 8th in the NBA. Their points for per game sit at 119.6, which is 8th. Field goal percentage is 48.1%, which is 7th. The 3-point percentage is 36.4%, which is tied for 11th. Free throw percentage is 76.2%, which is 25th. The rebounds per game is 44.3, which is 15th. The blocks per game is 5.4, which is tied for 6th. The turnover differential is minus 0.8, which is 22nd. The points against per game is 114.6, which is 11th in the league. The field goal against percent is 45.9%, which is tied for 4th. The 3-point field goal percentage against is 35.1%, which is 7th. The rebounds against is 43.5, which is 12th. Blocks against per game is 4.0, which is tied for 2nd. The Timberwolves have played quite a few games since we last spoke. Again, I do apologize for taking a break over the holidays. But they have played quite a few games. They lost to Memphis 116-111. They did take down the Oklahoma City Thunder with a fantastic three-pointer to take the lead by Anthony Edwards late in that game, and then they were down to against the Bucks big. Ended up coming back and winning that one 103-100. Cat returned to Minnesota for the second time since being dealt to the Knicks, and the Wolves won that one 115-104. They lost to the Denver Nuggets 142-138 in overtime. They lost to the Brooklyn Nets 123-107. They beat the Chicago Bulls in Chicago 136-101. And then they traveled down to Atlanta to take on the Hawks, where they lost 126-102. They went even further south to Miami, and they won 125-115. They won in Washington 141-115, and then they won, finally coming back home, 122-94 against the Heat. If we look ahead here, they've got 4 games in the next week. They play at home against Cleveland at 7 p.m. on Thursday, January 8th. They play at Cleveland, back-to-back games against the Cleveland Cavaliers. This one at noon on Saturday, January 10th. The Spurs come to town at 6 p.m. on Sunday, January 11th. They play at Milwaukee at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, January 13th. So the big news here out of Minnesota, we'll get into some of the current things that are happening. Some quotes from Anthony Edwards and Chris Finch here, going at each other in the media a little bit. But the big news is that Kevin Garnett is back. He will return as a team ambassador. He will also have his number 21 retired by the team. So it's the first jersey retirement since, or that hasn't been because somebody passed away. It's because somebody is actually really good. His quote was, "Minnesota is where it all began, where I was young, hungry, and learning how to compete at the highest level. I'm excited to be back in the Twin Cities at a time when Mark and Alex are setting a bold new vision for this franchise. Their leadership has brought fresh energy to the organization, and I'm excited to help build what's next for the Timberwolves, our fans, and this community." So, first of all, that's very clearly saying what we have all, is basically been assumed to be true. He didn't come back because of Glenn Taylor. That is basically what that quote says to me there. He's like, I love Minnesota. I have always loved Minnesota. And he says, I want to continue building this team for this. I'm excited for this community. I'm excited for this team. I'm excited for the fans especially. And it seems like, again, just further proof that Glenn Taylor is the reason that this jersey retirement and this reunion didn't happen any earlier. But I think that it's good that it happened now. And even after selling the team, Glenn Taylor sees these quotes and that this is happening and has to just needle his way back in there. And he was quoted by the Pioneer Press that just about the jersey being retired. His quote was, "For 5 different years, I checked with him to see if he would be willing to do it, and he chose not to do it." So again, from Glenn Taylor's voice, it is very clearly Glenn Taylor's fault. And Glenn Taylor is trying to say, no, he didn't want to do it. I'm like, and that's where I'd rebuttal that with, he didn't want to do it because of you. He didn't want to have his jersey retired because you were the owner of this team. And now that you're not, he's willing to sit down with Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez and have a discussion. And that when they have taken over this team, they realize that, this massive player in team history is important to fans. And that was part of them getting in good graces with the fans, which I think the number one way to do that is to win, which they have been doing since they've taken over and even just been in the building. But I think bringing back Kevin Garnett and is a massive piece to this puzzle to get fans more invested. And it sounds like this next piece is on its way, but building a new stadium. And I think they're looking into that right now, whether that be where Target Center is now or in Bloomington or where the farmers market is in Minneapolis. And I think that they're going to have to figure out what they want to do with that. And I think they'll come up with some sort of solution that they can. But yeah, I think that these two guys owning the team together is fantastic for the Timberwolves and Timberwolves fans, clearly. And it's proven even further by the first year that they had majority ownership. Kevin Garnett was like, yeah, I will retire my jersey now. And Glenn Taylor asked him 5 different times if he wanted to do it, and he said no. And it seems like Lowry and A-Rod asked him once, and he's like, absolutely. So just great to see KG back in the building. And I think he can help a lot of these young players too, and help a lot of this younger team, take that next step and not just go to the Western Conference Finals where you get knocked out in 6 games, 5 games. I want a championship. I want to win a championship. of the men's teams. And I know in this segment we talk about a women's team, but for the men's teams, it's been 91 was the last time a men's team won a championship here, and that I think is going to change here shortly. I think there is two teams in this market that are very, very close to winning the championship in their respective leagues, and I think bringing in Kevin Garnett to help sort some of that out is a good thing and will help this Timberwolves team in the long run. But another thing that they need to work on is this kind of some of these quotes that have come out from Ant and then Finch responding to him. Ant's quote here was, most of the time he was asked about the game plan. He goes, most of the time we just don't listen to the game plan. When we listen to it and execute it, we're pretty good. I don't know. We're hard-headed. We want to make the game harder. We listened tonight and it worked out. This was after, I believe, one of the blowout games recently. I think it was the Wizards game where they won 141 to 115. I can't remember exactly when it was, and I didn't write it down, so I apologize for that. But that was his quote. And then Finch responded. He went on KFAN 100.3 here in the Twin Cities. He said, well, I mean, listen, I would say they listen more than not. I think it's about putting the work in alongside whatever the game plan is. The game plan is not always going to be perfect. We sometimes don't get it right, and many times, once the game starts, you have to continually adjust. But if the effort's not there, then the game plan doesn't matter anyway, which I think is 100% true. Like the first and foremost, you have to be willing to actually put in effort to win games. Like, yes, there is a gap between the number 1 team in the league and the number 30 team in the league. But you can lose if you're not putting in the effort. You can lose to anyone on any given night. And I do think you also need to have a good game plan too. I don't think it is one or the other. I think you need to have effort and a good game plan. And Ant's quote is a little concerning here when he says we want to make the game hard. Like that just and again, like Finch said, I know that the game plan isn't always perfect. The game plan isn't going to be perfect every single night, but you have to be able to put in the effort to overcome that. So there's sometimes where it doesn't seem like they are putting in the effort, and sometimes that's coming off a back-to-back, which they're tired from the day before. But these top tier teams don't have the back-to-back, like don't use a back-to-back as an excuse, and they win back-to-back games, and they win playing back-to-back nights, and they don't use excuses for these other teams. And it seems like there are times where some immaturity comes out with this Timberwolves team, and part of that is because their superstar is 22 years old, 23 years old. I think he's 23 or 24 years old now at this point. And he is still relatively young, but he's got, I think, some growing up to do. But again, this is all with the asterisks of they are 11 games above 500. And they're still 11 games above 500 with them in games making it harder for themselves to succeed. So take what I just said with a little bit of a grain of salt, and know that they are still playing well. With the Lynx, there actually is a massive piece of news here for the Lynx. That massive piece of news is that Napheesa Collier had surgery on both ankles and will be out 4 to 6 months. Now, the WNBA doesn't start until next spring. Maybe later than, maybe it's this late spring, I think. I can't remember exactly, but they're their season doesn't start for a while, so hopefully she can be recovered fully before the start of next season, because she is a massive piece, maybe the single biggest piece of this Lynx team. We do have some predictions coming off the board here. Pretty good couple weeks here for the Wolves Den. I said the Ant will drop 40 plus in his first game back. He did not. I said the Wolves win the Christmas game. They did not. They lost to the Nuggets in overtime. And then this offseason, when there were some Karl Anthony Towns trade rumors swirling, I said that Cat stays with the Knicks until at least the game at Target Center, and the Wolves will win that game, which both of those things did come true, so there's another correct one there. And I said Naz Reid is the highest scorer in a game before January 1st. He dropped 33 in a game recently, which was the highest score. And then I said that Rudy has a 15-plus rebound game before February 1st. He has had multiple 15-plus rebound games already, so that he smashed that one. I have three more coming on the board. First one is that Ant drops 40 plus in a game before February 1st. And I want to challenge Rudy here and say that he has a 20 plus rebound game at some point this season. And then the third and final prediction is that Ant drops 35 plus in an elimination game in the 2026 playoffs. That could be the Wolves potentially being eliminated, or the Wolves potentially moving on, the other team being eliminated. But in an elimination game, Ant will drop 35 plus, and he will just take over the game and either extend the Wolf season or move them on to the next round. On to the Rinkside Rundown here. The Wild have improved to 25, 11, and 8 on the season for 58 points. That is third in the Central Division. That is third in the Western Conference. That is third in the NHL. The only two teams ahead of them are the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche, which they are technically tied with the Dallas Stars in terms of number of points, but Dallas has played one less game, so that they are technically ahead of the Wild due to that tiebreaker. That'll all get evened out at the end of the season. That will not be a necessary tiebreaker come April. Wild are scoring 3.11 goals per game, which is 13th in the NHL. They are allowing 2.64 goals against per game, which is third fewest in the NHL. They have 7 shutouts on the season, which is tied for first. The power play is chipping away at 22.4%, which is 10th in the NHL. The PK has settled in at 76.9%, which is 24th in the NHL. Faceoffs are still the number one thing they need to improve, which is 46.8%, which is tied for 28th in the NHL. The shots per game is 28.4, which is 15th, right around league average. The shots against is 29.8, which is 28th in the entire league. Gus Bus is 14, 9, and 4 on the season. He has a 9.12 save percentage, which is tied for 14th. He has a 2.48 goals against average, which is 15th, and he has 3 shutouts, which is tied for third. Jesper Wallstedt is 11, 2, and 4 on the season. He has a 9.28 save percentage, which is which is first in the NHL. He has a 2.30 goals against average, which is 5th, and he is tied for first with 4 shutouts with Ilya Sorokin of the New York Islanders. If we look back here to back before the Christmas holiday, They played at Columbus. They won that game 5-2. They came home against the Edmonton Oilers, which they won 5-2. They played the next day against the Colorado Avalanche, losing 5-1, which they looked absolutely exhausted in that game and just outclassed by the Avalanche. They lost to the Nashville Predators in their first game in their last game before the holidays. They lost 3-2 in overtime against the Nashville Predators. They played at Winnipeg coming out of the holidays. They won 4-3. And then played in Vegas against the Golden Knights, a lengthy road trip here because the World Juniors were happening at the XL Energy Center or the Grand Casino Arena. They won 5-2 against the Golden Knights. They lost 4-3 to the San Jose Sharks in a shootout. And then they won against the Anaheim Ducks 5-2 in Anaheim. They then played back-to-back games in LA against the Kings. So they played 3 straight games in Southern California. They lost in a shootout, the first one, and then lost in regulation 4-2 in the second one. If we look ahead here, they have one more game before on the road before returning home. They play at Seattle at 9 p.m. on Thursday, January 8th. They return home to play a couple of the new Metro teams, the New York Islanders at 7 p.m. on Saturday, January 10th, and the New Jersey Devils at 7 p.m. on Monday, January 12th. But the big news again here is that the U.S. Olympic team was announced. There's 3 members of the Minnesota Wild to make that team. That is Matt Boldy, Quinn Hughes, and Brock Faber. Those were the 3 that have made it for the U.S. team. Sweden also announced their roster. Philip Gustafsson, Jesper Wallstedt, Joel Eriksson and Jonas Brodin all made the Swedish team, which again, I think is great. I do like that, the Wild do have good players, and players that are going to be recognized on an international level for their respective teams, their respective countries. But the part that worries me here is you have 7 players, including both of your goaltenders, and 7, and maybe it's not the best player. It's maybe players, in terms of who the best players on this team are. It's maybe players 2 through 8 on this team, but you have 7 players that are contributing, and maybe Quinn Hughes is number 1, but you have 7 players that are high contributors on this team, and they are major contributors on this team, and now they are going into a 2-week stretch where they have to play extra games, and so I just worry a little bit about these 7 guys getting hurt during that tournament and potentially, just burning out by the end of the season, is my big worry. And we'll get into, there are some Olympians on the Frost too, but that's my big worry for those players too, is them just getting hurt, not playing for their team that they're under contract with, which again, I love the Olympics. I will be watching as many hockey games as I can of the Olympics, but I have to just wonder, because I care more about the Frost and the Wild than I do the U.S. Olympic teams. I just wonder if this is a mistake because of the conditions of the rink, which is a whole nother story of it does not look good over there. Like, they were just putting in seats in November and the games are in February, and they apparently didn't even have ice down yet. And it seems like they are just taking their time on building the actual rink. And the rink apparently is 4 feet shorter than the NHL regulations, which are already narrower than international competition. And I just wonder if it's going to cause more injuries at this point. So, Speaking of the Frost, they played 6 games. Again, decently lengthy road trip towards the end of it, but they did take down the Boston Fleet. For the Fleet go down for the first time all season. They went to Chicago to play the Ottawa Charge as part of their PWHL, like across the continent, playing in other locations other than the 8 now that have a PWHL team. But they were in Chicago. The Charge won 3-2 in overtime. The Frost then went to Vancouver and won 2-1 in overtime. They went to Toronto, stayed in Canada, and won 5-1. And then they went to Ottawa to play the Charge again. They lost 5-2, and then lost 3-2 to Montreal in overtime. They've got 2 more games here. Excuse me. No, they don't. I have not updated my sheet. I will get this up, what their schedule looks like here. But again, they are getting back on getting back at home here after a lengthy road trip, again, due to the World Juniors being at the XL Energy Center, basically from the 26th until this past Monday. But the Minnesota Wild, excuse me, not the Minnesota Wild, the Minnesota Frost, this new Frost team here, another team that can actually win a championship, unlike the men's teams in this state. Their next game is at home against Seattle on Sunday, January 11th at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. But again, the U.S. Olympic women's team announced their roster recently. The following 6 players made it from the Frost: Kendall Coyne-Schofield, Lee Stecklin, Kelly Panic, Taylor Heisey, Grace Zumwinkle, and Britta Curl-Salami. Which again, I just have a bad feeling about it because of just injury, and I do think that these players are going to go over there and play really well, but I just worry about injury and them coming back to have, down another player due to a game that wasn't a Frost game, and them not getting one of these massive pieces of their team for however long that they're out for, potentially, hopefully, knock on wood, the rest not, they come back before the end of the season. But 3 predictions coming off the board here before we'll put 3 back on. I said that Kirill scores 25 before January 1st. He is sitting at 24 right now. So after January 1st, and he is not there yet. I said that the Wild get 13 of the next 16 possible points. I messed up in my head. I was trying to go for the next 4 games when I predicted this, and they won 4 in a row up to that point. But I did just think to myself that I said 13 of 16, and I need to stick with that. So they ended up getting 13 out of 16 out of the next 16 possible points from when I predicted that one. And then I said the Frost hand the Fleet their first loss of the season, which they did. Another prediction coming on, or another 3 coming on the board to replace these 3. I said that the Wild and or Frost will win their respective cup in 2026. So this current season that we are in, the Wild and or Frost will win the cup. I said that Quinn Hughes will score 10 plus goals this season. He is sitting at 3 goals this season thus far. And then I said that Quinn Hughes will score a goal, at least 1 goal in the 2026 playoffs. Moving on now to the Nordic Report. The Vikings finished the season on a 5-game winning streak, having beaten the Giants, Lions, and Packers since the last time we spoke. They finished with a 9-8 record. They went 4-2 in the division, 7-5 in the conference. They were the NFC 8 seed, just missing out on the playoffs by half a game, and they were the 3rd team in the NFC North. The offense finished with 275 yards per game, 28th in the league, 20.2 points per game, which is 26th in the league. They finished with a 31.8% conversion rate on third down, which was dead last in the entire NFL. They converted 15 out of 24 fourth downs. That is good for 62.5%, which is 8th in the NFL. The defense is allowed 282 yards against per game, which is 3rd. They allowed 19.6 yards or points against per game, which is 7th in the league. Third down, they were 4th best in the entire NFL on third down. They stopped opponents 146 times on 223 attempts. That is 65.5% success rate. On fourth down, they were 8 of 24 for 33%. That is tied for 26th. Will Reichert this year went 94.3%, 33 of 35. That is 3rd in the NFL. His long was still the 62-yarder against the Cincinnati Bengals. And his extra points, the PATs, he was 100% this year on PATs, 31 of 31. Again, the last 3 games, they won in New York, 16-13. Fantastic defensive performance by this Buffalo defense, which we have a Buffalo discussion here coming up in a second. They did not allow Jackson Dart to even attempt to pass until the second quarter. And I believe it was late second quarter or early third quarter when he finally completed a pass. But the Lions came to town on Christmas. The Vikings won 23-10. The Vikings defense had 6 takeaways between interceptions and fumbles. Harrison Smith got his 39th career interception. And then the Green Bay Packers JV team came to town in week 18. The Vikings won that game 16-3 in what was likely Harrison Smith's last game as in the NFL. It's likely CJ Ham's last game in the NFL too. So I know they're probably not watching this, but if they are, either one of those guys, I do want to thank them for being members of this team, members of the Vikings, for both of them, for over a decade, 15 years, almost 15 years for Harrison Smith, and almost a decade at 9 years for CJ Ham. But one more stat for Justin Jefferson is that he broke the record for most receiving yards in the first 6 seasons of his career. He passed Randy Moss at 8,375. That's what Moss was at. Jefferson did surpass that and took over sole possession of that race there. He also tied Randy Moss for most consecutive seasons to start a career with 1,000 or more receiving yards. That is second. So 6 is second most. He has a ways to go to beat Mike Evans. I believe Mike Evans has like 11. This was like the season that ended that streak. So he's got five more seasons to tie that, 6 more to break that one. But we'll go back to Brian Flores here. There are a few different places that he could be here in 2026, this upcoming season. I think I would love to see him as the Vikings defensive coordinator still. But there are some other options, and I'm going to lay out 4 different options here of where I think Brian Flores could go. One was a rumor report that he will. Jerry Jones is calling him about being a defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think that that's a realistic possibility. I'm not doubting the report that happened. I do think Jerry Jones probably did call Flores about it, but I don't think that he is going to lateral move to a different team as a defensive coordinator, especially if he's getting opportunities as a head coach. But there are 3 head coaching opportunities that I think, 2 of them, one of them is very, very likely. I think the betting odds favorite, and that would be the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that they have basically put in a request to interview him. I don't even know if he needs a request because I think he's a free agent coach this year. So they're talking about interviewing him, at least getting that first interview done. I know that doesn't necessarily 100% guarantee that he will get the head coaching job of the Raiders, but I think the big piece of that is Tom Brady too, going back to their Patriots days when Flores was the on the coaching staff, the defensive coaching staff there under Belichick with Brady. I think this next one actually makes the most amount of sense for Brian Flores. I think that if you look at it, he doesn't need to, but he should go to a team that has a quarterback that is already developed, that just needs and also has a good offense that just needs defensive help. I think that the perfect fit for Brian Flores would be the Cincinnati Bengals, but the Bengals have said that they're hanging on to Zach Taylor, and I think that they are making a mistake in hanging on to Zach Taylor and not hiring Brian Flores. I think he would be a fantastic head coach in Cincinnati. I think he could also a free agent this year. I'm pretty sure he's a free agent this year is Andrew Van Ginkel. He could bring Andrew Van Ginkel with him to Cincinnati. But I think that makes Cincinnati, to me, makes the most amount of sense, even though I understand that Vegas might be the better betting odds. I think that he is probably going to, or would be better as the Bengals head coach. And if he went out and brought in like a Mike McDaniels, I know Mike McDaniels is still in Miami, but still the head coach in Miami. But if Mike McDaniels gets fired, and he could bring in Mike McDaniels as the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati. But the longest shot, I think, for the head coaching bits of this would be him staying real close to home here, and the Vikings firing Kevin O'Connell and promoting Brian Flores to head coach. And then I think this actually makes some sense in that if they could hire Brian Daboll as the offensive coordinator for the Vikings, that he could help develop J.J. McCarthy, because if you look at the stats for Jackson Dart before and after the before Brian Daboll got fired, he had way better stats with Daboll than he did without him. And Brian Daboll was also the one that helped develop Josh Allen and turned him from this super raw prospect into one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the league today. And I think those two as the head coach and then OC, them running the team together and basically being head coach offense, head coach defense, like the way they have it set up now, but just switching which side of the ball technically has the head coach. I think that would be a fantastic plan for the Vikings. And Yeah, I don't think that is going to happen. I think the Wolves are going to stay with Kevin O'Connell for one more year. But yeah, and then the next week I want to have a 2026 quarterback discussion. I have 6 options here for the Vikings starting quarterback in week 1 of 2026. And I want to see down in the comments of who you guys think should be the Vikings starting quarterback. First option is obvious. It's JJ McCarthy. You just stick with him for week 1 next year. Second is you bring in the next. I'm going to lump the next 3 together, and it is I'm calling the realistic guy to compete with JJ McCarthy for the starting job, and that would be Aaron Rodgers, Mac Jones, and Kirk Cousins as those 3 to compete with JJ McCarthy. And then the next 2 I am saying are you give up JJ McCarthy to go and trade, and more JJ McCarthy and more to go and trade for these 2, one of these 2 guys, and that being Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Now, a trade package for those 2, keep in mind with this, a trade package, if you were to say that you could just plop one of those 2 on the Vikings right now, I'm all in on that. But you can't. So I am going to give you guys what a potential trade package like that would look like. And I think it would be a JJ McCarthy, Jordan Addison, the Vikings 2026 first, which is 18th overall, and then a 2027 first round pick for either one of those 2. And it might be more, honestly, than that. But those would be the starter, I think, for one of those 2. So basically, who would you want here of the 6? I'll go over them again quickly. McCarthy, JJ McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers, Mac Jones, Kirk Cousins, and either Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert for JJ McCarthy, Jordan Addison, and 2 first-round picks. Who would you want as the week 1 starter next year for the Vikings? Lot of stuff came off the board here this time. This was going back to the Giants game. I said the over 43.5 hits. It did not. Said JJ McCarthy wins NFC offensive player. JJ McCarthy wins offensive player of the month during the season. He did not. He won offensive player of the week in week 1. I said the 2025 Vikings will finish with more points for per game than the 2024 Vikings. They did not. I said the 2025 Vikings defense will finish with more turnovers than the 2024 Vikings defense. They did not. Justin Jefferson scores double-digit touchdowns. He did not. And then I said that Justin Jefferson averages 100-plus yards per game in 2025. That would mean he'd need to have 1,700 yards. He did not even have 1,100 yards. I said at least 2 of the following sound the Gallagher horn: Naz Reid, Brock Faber, Philip Gustafson. I did not see any of them sound the Gallagher horn this year. And then I said Justin Jefferson finishes with more receiving yards than Jamar Chase. There were only 3 receivers in the NFL that finished with more receiving yards than Jamar Chase. In terms of the good, I said Justin Jefferson finishes with 100 or 1,000 plus receiving yards in 2025. That is when he was sitting at like 800 something with 3 weeks left. So that is correct. Said the Vikings, beginning of the season, I said the Vikings sweep the Packers and or the Lions. They swept the Lions. They split with the Packers. Said the Vikings covered the 3-point spread against the Giants. They did win by 3, so I'm counting that as covering. And then I said the Vikings go above 500 in the division, so 500 or 3-3 or worse would be wrong. 4-2 or better is right, and they went 4-2. That brings it up to 50 total correct out of 140 total predicted for 36%. 3 more coming on the board here. Said J.J. McCarthy will be listed as the QB2 in Week 1, 2026. I do think that they need to bring in some sort of quarterback to compete at least with J.J. McCarthy this year. I said that Justin Jefferson will go over 1,000 receiving yards, in 2026. I'm clarifying. In 2026, Justin Jefferson will go over 1,000 receiving yards. And Brian Flores will not be the Vikings defensive coordinator in 2026. I think he is moving on to greener pastures as a head coach in this league. All right, the final team segment of episode 51 here. Target Field Talkers. Got a few things to go over here. Couple ownership things, and then a couple of off-season moves here. So first thing, we'll go over some of the off-season moves. First, just another like Olympic, semi-Olympic. The World Baseball Classic is happening here in March, and Joe Ryan was added to the Team USA World Baseball Classic roster. And then, so again, congratulations to him. Again, a little bit worried just about injury. But the second thing here is, according to Matt Gelb of The Athletic, he wrote that the Phillies have explored contingencies because if pitchers and catchers report to Florida in 5 weeks, it would be ideal to have a starting catcher report. The Phillies have talked trades for catchers, young and old. In Minnesota's Ryan Jeffers is one potential target, league sources told The Athletic. But the closer everyone gets to camp's opening, the more reluctant teams are to trade away a catcher. So the Phillies have called the Minnesota Twins about Ryan Jeffers. But then the two big pieces of news here is that first one is that from Joe Nelson of Sports Illustrated said that Joe Pohlad is being replaced by his brother Tom. Tom is stepping down. So Tom is taking over as the executive chair for the Twins. Tom is stepping down as the chairman of Pohlad Companies. And he said that he is well aware that fans have lost trust and confidence in our family as owners. Again, I just don't think that this changes too much with this ownership group here. But we do now know, and this is the other piece of news, we do now know who the 3 minority ownership groups are. And the first one, so it started off as just 2, but they announced recently that they haven't announced who the new owners were, because there was a third one coming in, and they are needed to work that out before they could make it public who all of the minority owners were. The first minority owner here is George G. Hicks. That is the Vardy Partners co-founder and co-exec chair. That was reported on a couple weeks ago. That the Vardy Partners, but George G. Hicks will be the one heading up the Vardy Partners ownership stake in the Twins. The second one here is a New York-based law investment firm. It's the Glick Family Investments, and then Chief Investment Officer, CIO, Sam Levinson is leading the investment. I don't know why it's Sam Levinson when it's the Glick family. But the third one that they added that I think is fantastic here for the Twins, and something that the Twins should be excited about, is that Minnesota Wild owner Craig Leipold has purchased a minority stake in the Twins. The deal with all three of these minority ownership groups is for 20% of the franchise, and that evaluation is at $1.75 billion. And it does help pay off at least part of the $400 to $500 million worth of debt. The team would not reveal how much of the debt it did pay off, but I do think that Craig Leipold, being the owner, or at least a minority owner here of the Twins, is great for the Twins, because either the Pohlads keep the team and he is able to put have some input, or they keep the team and he is able to advise the team on kind of what to do business wise, and what to do for helping with the players and player development here. Because again, like if you look at the Wild, the team that he has owned, there were some dark days for the Wild. They also have not made it out of the first round in over a decade. But that franchise is one of the more beloved franchise in hockey. Like, it is probably the second most loved franchise in the state of Minnesota, behind the Vikings. And he knows how to keep people coming back into that building. And he knows, he's figured that part out. He is also okay with spending $17 million on Kirill Kaprizov and going out and signing, two players, Parisi and Suter, to 13-year deals where they're making almost $10 million a year. And I think that he is a fantastic minority owner here in this team. And he is but again, another option here is I think this is a long shot. I don't have any either reason to believe that this is true. I don't have any evidence, but there is a possibility that he just straight up buys the Twins himself, and he is the one that owns the Twins, along with the Wild. Like, there's no rule saying that he couldn't own both the Wild and the Twins. But again, he has done a fantastic job, I think, as the Wild owner, and letting his front office run the team, and being a more of a hands-off owner than a hands-on owner. So I think that this is a fantastic investment here, if he could somehow turn around this team and help the Pohlads turn around this team. Didn't have anything come off the board for predictions. Have 3 coming on the board here. Said the Royce Lewis hits the Twins' first Grand Slam in 2026. So 2 parts. The Twins will hit at least 1 Grand Slam this year, and the first one will be by Royce Lewis. I said that the Pablo Lopez has a sub 2.75 ERA and starts at least 25 games in 2026. And that is the 2026 regular season. I'm not counting if the Twins somehow make the playoffs or if he's dealt to a playoff contending team. I also said, final prediction here, Byron Buxton will hit 30-plus home runs in the 2026 regular season. All right, welcome into the final team segment of episode 50, or excuse me, not the final team segment, the final segment of episode 51 of the 301 show. This is the power ranking segment. It is a segment we do each and every episode, where I take a Minnesota sports topic and rank them 1 to 10 in that topic, and you guys give me feedback on where I went right, where I went wrong. You can leave that down below if you want in the comments. You can also email the show with any suggestions for list ideas. Some previous list ideas that we have done is best one-year wonders. We've done the best duos, best mascots, best venues in Minnesota. But today we are doing the 10 best comebacks in Minnesota sports history. So this isn't necessarily the biggest comeback in Minnesota sports history. This is just the best comebacks in Minnesota sports history. So coming in here at number 10 is October 19th, 2021. I believe this may have been the home opener for the Wild that year. It was early on in the season for sure. The Wild were down 5-3 with 5 minutes left in the third period, and they came back and won 6-5 in overtime. So scoring two goals in the final 5 minutes of regulation to tie it, and then scoring the overtime winner gets the Wild the number 10 spot on this list. They also come in here at number 9. This one was the season opener. It was October 8th, 2015, in Colorado. The Wild were down 4-1 at the end of the second period, and they came back and won 5-4. That was also a Zach Parise hat trick that helped propel them to the win. We will stay on the ice. Another home game, though, for the Wild, coming in at number 8, December 9th, 2014. The New York Islanders at the Minnesota Wild. Same scenario here. The Wild were down 4-1 at the end of the second period, and they came back and won 5-4. Slightly edging them out, though, is number 7, the Chicago Blackhawks at the Minnesota Wild on January 9th, 2010. That game, the Wild were down 5-1 after 2, and they came back and won 6-5 in a shootout. Number 6 here, we go back to the year 2000. May 10th, 2000 is the Cleveland Indians, now Guardians, taking on the Minnesota Twins. The Twins were down 8-1 in the middle of the 7th inning, and they came back and won 10-9. So that one comes in here at number 6. I'll pull up the top 5 here. 1-5. And coming in here at the number 5 spot, we go to the court. It is the WNBA Finals, Game 1 of the 2024 Finals. It was the Minnesota Lynx at the New York Liberty. The Lynx were down 39-21 in the second quarter. They were also down 83-72 in the fourth, and they came back both times and won 95-93 in overtime. We move back to the Diamond here, to a game I was actually in attendance for. This will be back in 2015. In July 10th, 2015, the Detroit Tigers were in town. The Twins were down 6-1 in the middle of the 9th inning, and they came back and won it on a walk-off 3-run home run by All-Star Brian Dozier. Number 3 here, we move to the gridiron. Maybe not the last time we see the Vikings on this list here, but the Vikings traveled to Buffalo on November 13th, 2022. They were down 17 in the third quarter, and they won 33-30 in overtime. That was also Jefferson's maybe best catch of his career so far in that game. The reason I don't have this ranked any higher is because it did take a bit of luck in Josh Allen fumbling the ball in the end zone. Number 2 here, going back to the court, it will be the Western Conference semifinals, Game 7 in 2024, the Minnesota Timberwolves at the Denver Nuggets. The Wolves were down in the third quarter, 58-38, and they came back and won 98-90 to advance to the Western Conference Finals for the first time since that 2003 Kevin Garnett season. But at number 1, it is can't be any other game than the largest comeback in the league's history. It is that same Viking season, 2022, KOC's first year. They clinched the division after being down 33-0 at halftime to the Indianapolis Colts at US Bank Stadium. And then they came back and won 39-36. They went on a 39-3 run in the second half and overtime. That game against the Colts comes in at number 1 on this week's power rankings for the best comebacks in Minnesota sports history. All right. Thank you for watching episode 51 of the 301 show. Please leave a comment down below. Let me know where you agree or disagree with me. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on the video. It really helps me out. Lets the YouTube internet gremlins here know that it is a good video, good channel to check out. You can also email the show again, like I said, at frozennorth30@gmail.com. And we will see you for episode 52. Peace.